We are now live streaming and the recording is on. And so we're going to start here, and I think our clerk has a message about how we're operating under COVID-19 rules briefly.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So just a reminder for our committee members, if you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function on the bottom of the participants list in Zoom. Please mute yourself if you are not speaking. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and Chair Miller will acknowledge you. For our members who are joining from the public, if you would like to speak and you're joining us via Zoom, also please use the raise hand function and we will announce you prior to speaking. If you're joining us by phone only, you can press dial *9 on your phones, and that will use the raise hand function for us to alert that you would like to speak. You can also email me at the email address that's listed on our agenda. And with that, I will hand it off to our chair.
Well, coming right back to you. Everything is going to be done by roll call vote. So first thing is call us to order and we get a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair Miller.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
Gibbons.
Here.
Sinks.
Here.
Abekoga.
Here.
Thank you, all are present.
Perfect. Okay, at this point, public comment on non-agendized items. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on something that's not on our agenda? I see no hands raised. Does the clerk have any communications?
No communications received.
Okay, so before we start, Margaret, did you have anything that we had to cover? I shouldn't say had to, that you really appreciate we cover before you might have to leave?
No, actually, I was given a briefing on all the items, so you can
Excellent.
proceed as is. Thanks.
Excellent. Oh, it's always wonderful to be here with such prepared people, staff and fellow members. So we're going to do the consent calendar. We have two items on the consent calendar, both minutes.
I move consent.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let me check. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on our consent calendar? Seeing none, any comments from us?
No comments received.
Okay, any comments from the board? Seeing none, we will call the question. All those in favor, and I'm sorry, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller.
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith.
Aye.
Gibbons.
Aye.
Sinks.
Aye.
Thank you. Abekoga.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Perfectly. Our regular calendar, we're going to start with our CEO report. And Gresh was having some technical difficulty, but hopefully we're good right now.
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Oh, perfectly.
Perfect. I'm having some video problems, so I'm going to stay on audio. So I'll keep my CEO report short because several of the items will get handled in subsequent items. Big picture, talking about COVID impacts from an employee standpoint, we are still all doing well. We appreciate the support from the board on everything that you've provided to keep the morale going, etc., and just resources to enable us to work effectively. As I said at the board meeting, the productivity of staff continues to be pretty amazing. It seems like we are on Teams meetings or Zoom meetings all day, but at the same time, we are also doing some other activities to make sure the team spirit continues to be strong. At the moment, we are in the middle of a step competition, which will end on Sunday. So we're getting people to take some walks, etc. On the revenue side, we have seen a drop in revenues of about 5%. On the load side, from starting off shelter in place, our cumulative load loss over this SIP period of about 30 days has been about 8%, with residential load being higher and commercial and industrial load being lower. On the supply side, we continue to work on managing the portfolio day to day, and at the same time working on our long-term contracts. we do expect there to be rough weather in the coming months as the impacts of COVID start to hit the ability of customers to pay bills. And we are working through Cal CCA and in a joint effort to work with PG&E and the CPUC to manage cash flows in an equitable fashion. So with that, and then I'm not going to spend much time, barely any time on the regulatory and legislative front, other than to say that it's progressing as we talked to you in the last board meeting. And you're all probably aware that the legislature is going to be coming back in session in May for a 3-week period with each committee having one hearing. That's the word we've got so far. However, there's going to be a lot of pressure to keep bills only to COVID related and budget related. So as we know more, we'll update you. That's all I have right now, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any.
All right, anybody have any questions right off? Seeing none, let me see if any member of the public has a comment on this item. Seeing none, has our clerk received any comments?
No comments received.
Okay, Rod.
It sounds like those parties are pretty raucous and sounds pretty exciting, those employee parties you're having.
Oh,
Amy's smiling.
We have a very creative team that's put together some fun activities. We'll update the board on this, maybe at the next meeting, we'll get a montage going of the different activities that we've undertaken.
Excellent. Thanks for the report.
Yeah, employees in a small organization are the backbone of everything that we do. And, I can't make it happy for the rest of the world, but at least here it seems like we've got a little more flexibility than other organizations and a staff that seems more flexible than other organizations. So I'm just happy to see all that's going on. The CEO report was not an action item, so I think we're going to move on then. If there are no other comments. Question 3, proposed programs for customer relief and long-range community resilience. Also discussion.
So, Chair Miller, I'll just start with a couple of comments as we get to the next slide and hand it over after a couple of slides to Don Bray. So this item is to give you the overall structure of the programs we are planning on implementing based on your direction to allocate $10 million for customer relief and longer-term community resiliency. In addition, we've got input from a variety of people, including all our staff have contributed to ideas, and we've kind of pared it down to a few that we are presenting to you today. You can go to the next slide. So we really have to balance what we can actually do as an agency, in addition to everything else that's going on with the state, the county, national support, etc. At the same time, we know that the COVID impacts are going to last a long time. So we're trying to make sure that the money that you have set aside can be utilized over a period of time. So making sure that there's a time element to how we spend the money too. Some going out right away and some going out later in the year and even to next year. And keeping in mind that things will change as we've talked to you about our forecast and our revenues and some of the regulatory issues we are dealing with. In the coming months, we should have more clarity about impacts, and we will be able to revisit the programs and even the amount of money that we are dedicating to these programs later in the year. So given all the unknowns we have, here's the set of programs that we would like to get your input on. And I'll turn this over to Don Bray.
All right, thanks, Garish, and good morning, everyone. So we presented a slightly less polished view of this exact chart to the MOG yesterday. They had some good input for us. We've made a few tweaks, but we never really made it past this slide. We spent a lot of time really looking at how these proposed programs would work kind of as a group to meet that variety of goals that Girish just walked through. So 3 broad categories of programs: customer relief, what we're calling workforce relief, and then community resiliency. And in broad numbers, we're looking at about $3.5 million for customer relief. The intention would be to get that money out pretty quickly. About $1.5 million for workforce relief, and that money would go out quickly to intermediate term. And then community resiliency, about half of the funds, $5 million, and that would be on a slightly longer term trajectory through the end of this year and next year. So I'll start at the top with customer relief. We are proposing $100 bill credits to all residential care and FERA customers. A $100 bill credit is approximately 1 month of electric charges, both from us and PG&E, so the full electric bill that a typical care FERA customer would pay. About 10% of our customers are care FERA. It's an income-based program, and there's sort of a sliding scale in terms of household income and household size. The program's been around for a long time. It's administered through PG&E and definitely recognized as a way that the low-income community can get a break on their bill. You get on the order of somewhere between a 20 and 35% discount if you're a care FERA customer. And then we would be looking to, again, direct a credit specifically to this group of customers. The second part of this program of customer relief would be focused on the smallest business customers. And the way we thought about this is we would look at our A1, so that's the smallest commercial rate class. We would take those customers, and if a customer is only an A1 customer, so they only have a small electric account with us and not additional larger accounts, then we would send a communication to them saying that we can make a $250 bill credit available to them if they're in need. They would need to respond to us by sending the mailer back or responding through an online portal to indicate their need and their interest in this. And then we would credit them for $250, which is approximately 1 month worth of electric bill for the average A1 customer. And this is a group where the average varies by a lot more, but that is the average amount. So those are the 2 programs that we are looking at for direct relief to customers. Again, about $1.5 million. Yeah.
I was going to say, if we could pause on each category, let me see if the board members have any questions at this point. Liz? Liz, if you could unmute.
There. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to use my screen so I can see everything. Possibly 2 basic questions. I understand the term relief, but I'm wondering, and I think resiliency is overused, but I'm almost thinking all 3 programs should have the same name. So customer resiliency, we're trying to help people bounce back. And I would mention that there is this 8-week time in the governor's ordinance, what do you call it, declarations. So the timing might be better at the end of the 8 weeks when people are going to try and stop paying bills again, ideally. And then I wasn't clear if it's $100 for 1 month, just $100. And if that's true, then maybe we split it over 2 months. Just thoughts, and the same thing is true for the businesses. The 250, is it of any value to try and split it up over 2 months? And I say that to try and encourage people to pay their bills, because there is going to be a tendency not to pay bills, even if they know they have to pay them later. I'm just thinking of psychological strategy.
So relative to the way, again, the way we were envisioning the credit working, and it sounds like this is your understanding too, but yeah, the $100 would go into the customer's account, you know, at a time. If they didn't use it all, say in a particular month, the remaining amount of that credit rolls forward into the next month. There's an expression that's used, credit is cash. So really it's just applied to their account. I think what you're suggesting is perhaps the application happens in, say, $50 increments if it's a residential customer. Is that the suggestion? That
Yes, I mean, my comment is based on the fact that two things. One is there is this 8-week time frame that's in the current declarations, I believe. That's still the case. And two is people have been told that they will not lose their power. So there's going to be an incentive, particularly for our lower income people, to push off paying. So then you get stuck with the issue of the money just simply pay bills in arrear. How do we blend helping them pay their bills in a way that's constructive for them and for us?
okay.
On a related sort of question, and then Rod's got a question. So go ahead and unmute, Rod. I am wondering, Don, are there not other programs that are also funneling money for the CareFira customers? Or is it that we're the only ones who would be providing them money? I mean, like, what about their gas bill? What are they going to get from PG&E if they were a PG&E customer?
So again, the basic thing you get as a Care and Fira customer is a pretty substantial discount, up to a 35% discount. There is also the opportunity to go on a payment plan. Again, not the same thing, but if you're behind and delinquent in your payments, you can, in a sense, take anything that you owe and put it on a bill in the future. So just put it on a bill that you would need to pay in the future and not be delinquent anymore. But you do have to keep up with your payments, and it would be what you owe this month plus some percentage of what you are in arrears for. That's how a payment plan works. In general, we want to encourage customers in need to go on the CARE program. And right now, and there's a lot of advertising from PG&E going on around this, the bar for becoming a CARE Fira customer is lowered significantly. Really, you can call PG&E and say, hey, I'm impacted by COVID. I've lost my job, or I'm on reduced hours, and they will put you on the CARE Fira plan right away. So you get that discount. But that's really the principal way that people are getting a break, versus other programs where utility costs are being reduced or somehow covered.
Yeah, okay. Rod?
Yeah, I think this is really well balanced in response. I mean, I talked to Girish some time ago about the items that show up now in green, wanting to have the longer term impact. But on the first items, I think Liz makes an interesting point, and what I see that there's publicity value for us, frankly, in these steps. But for the individual customers, do we have means on the bill of saying, here's a credit from Silicon Valley Clean Energy? Does that come at a cost to us? I mean, if we can get some if this becomes known to our customers, maybe there is some value of having this appear on the bill several times. So if you say, well, okay, you know, we're a third of the bill and $100 covers 1 month of all the charges, maybe it would also cover 3 months of SVCE electricity charges.
Yeah.
Can you comment about how this shows up in terms of the customer that's receiving the value?
Yes. So the thought here was, and Peninsula Clean Energy has basically charted the way on this, done a very similar thing. But we would send out a letter to all Carafera customers telling them what is about to happen. And then if we were to use Liz's idea here, what would happen is the following bill that they receive on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy bill page would be a line item that says, you know, $50 credit for whatever terminology we want to use, you know, customer resiliency related to COVID. So it would be clearly marked as a credit on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy bill page. And yeah, I kind of like this idea too, in that it keeps it on there for a couple of months in increments. And yeah, it's the same amount at the end of the day, and puts it there a few times. It would be
Right. I mean, it's
yeah.
more impressions for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And
this
yeah,
is
so,
part of Silicon Valley's energy's $2.5 million credit to selected customers, and, you know, or low-income customers, and whatever we think has the best understood.
It's always a double-edged sword, because one payment that says one time is different than reoccurring payment. And, you know, how many people be on the third month going, hey, where's my $50? I'm still out of my job. So I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I worry about the negative implications too. There's some level of society that's just going to be in a space where they're never going to pay their bills, and it's you know, there's going to be a reason and an excuse for everything, because they're just stuck, and they're going to wonder where their extra money was and why we didn't give it to them. The vast majority of people would probably just be happy to get the money, and whether it goes on your bill 1 month or it's 2 months, the advantage to us is you see our name twice. We just have to make the messaging clear that this isn't forever.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that if the people owe money, then the amount we're giving is simply going to go to their debt, what they haven't paid. So I was trying to take that onus off.
Yeah, I mean, we pay the money and it'll go to paying for their gas bill.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, it's all on the same PG&E bill. If your total's $100 and you got,
but it's a line item. But we have a line item where we're going to show a credit just for us.
It's a line item, but it's cash on the bill.
it would be cash on the electric, on the electric bill. It wouldn't cover the
Oh, okay.
the gas obligation.
Thank you. I thought you said cash is cash. I was treating it as a credit on the bill.
You don't have any way of crediting it to our charges exclusively, do you?
Yeah.
Doing that starts to get a lot more complicated.
Okay.
It's not undoable, but yeah, it mechanically gets quite a bit more complicated.
I have a suggestion. I think these are all good ideas. How we are going to communicate with customers if we do it the way Peninsula did it, through a letter telling them that this credit is going to show up on their bill. So through that letter, we would be saying this credit is going to show up over the next 2 months. So that's a way of communicating there's an end to it. and $50. It's a round number, so maybe it's 2 months or 4 months. I would suggest we do 2 months, but we can go either way.
Yeah, 2 months. Okay, any other comments on this particular section? I'm going to mess you up, Don. We won't even get off the slide here either, right?
Yeah, I would like to, I want to make sure that we're clear on 1B. I don't know if that's what you mean by section.
Yeah, we're in the customer relief section, and we
Yeah.
our workforce yet.
So the idea would be for the similar idea, $125 over 2 months for a small business credit. In the meeting yesterday with the MOG, what we were hearing from a lot of the different agencies represented was tremendous pressure on the cities for support of the small business community, just getting hammered right now. And the cities are really eager to help this customer community in any way that they can. So they were all over this. In fact, we had a smaller number on here than $1 million, and we took some money from some other places and beefed this up a little bit based on the input that we got from them. If we would be sending out more, in a sense, letters than we anticipate we'll get responses from, it's going to be a little hard to predict how many responses we get, and it will be a first come, first serve type of relief program. So customers will have to respond, potentially quickly. Yeah. So the $250 bill credit would cover 4,000 small business customers, right? Plus or minus, and we would be sending out probably on the order of 10 or 11,000 letters. So just to give you a sense for what we're looking at there, a concern that we do have is, what if everybody wants it? And, again, I don't think everyone will. There are big global customers that have A1 accounts in our service territory. 250 probably isn't going to mean a whole lot to them. And we are going to, in a sense, on the letter that they respond to, invoke the honor system. If you need this, respond. If not, it's going to go further with the small businesses that do need it.
So you didn't want to put some sort of revenue limit or some sort of commentary like that, so we don't end up with the situation that's happened at the national level. Yeah,
the steakhouse example got invoked yesterday.
Yeah.
But we can try to do that. It's just, we don't know a lot about these small business customers. We don't know whether they are fabulously wealthy businesses or not. But I mean, we could put some sort of guidance on there, I think.
It is going to have to be honor system and get too onerous to administer if it was anything but honor system. But we might want to put on some guidelines to at least give the semblance of we're trying to keep the Shake Shacks out of the list and some other. Liz,
I'm agree.
Was it Shake Shack?
I agree.
Okay. One payment or two for businesses. I actually feel the opposite on businesses. They already are managing cash flow and dealing with situations. It seems like it would be better to have a larger number at one payment. That would be more impactful and noticeable to them. Any thoughts by anybody on that?
That makes sense.
One other vote of support I'd throw in for that is they have to respond to the letter. So they're going to know this is happening, versus
right.
being invisible. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay, can we move on to workforce?
Okay. So workforce electrification training, this is a really interesting idea. The thought here is that we would put together a series of courses about 5 to 6 hours of training. We've got 5 courses identified. You take that series of courses online, and assuming that you complete those courses, you are paid a $500 stipend, or what would net be a $500 stipend. The courses would be directed to contractors and tradespeople. So the idea is that you have a contractor's license or a union card, or that you're in the building professions. We could extend this to building officials and to designers if we wanted. Again, but we would like to have some, when they sign up for this, they have to indicate their professional affiliation, and it needs to be relevant. The training is higher level. It's really focused on the value, customer value of the different electrification elements, solar, heat pump water heating, heat pump HVAC, et cetera. We've got a professional lined up who has done this type of training in the past. He's terrific. And we would need to work to package this into an online format for delivery to a wide audience. Again, we're thinking, on the order of 1,000 people we'd want to get this out to. We're also working with a local community college that we would package this up and essentially deliver it through. So using a learning platform that the community college would host. That's the concept here. We think, ideally we can get this training together by the June timeframe, and then people would take it over the summer and get their net $500 stipend. So it gets money out there quickly, and also really helps to advance the electrification mission that we're on. It supports the reach code work, right? In fact, the reach codes could be teed up in this training. Hey, building professionals, this is something you need to understand, because reach codes are here, and this is going to mean money in your pocket if you're out in front on these newer technologies, and conversant and good in dealing with customers on. So that's the workforce electrification training concept. 2B is something that, imagine our heat pump water heater program, right? Where we paid customers to install heat pump water heaters. But what we would do here is direct a similar type of program to tradespeople. So this would be exclusively for contractors and trades. And if you install one of these in your home, get that home in the service territory, we will pay you to do that. And part of what we pay you will cover, in a sense, your labor, assuming that you've been involved in putting the device in. And we're thinking about 3 classes of devices here: heat pump water heating, heat pump HVAC, and battery storage. So any one of those 3 would qualify. We'd be looking at probably on the order of 100 installations. So this is a pretty targeted program, 100 installations, 5,000 in support. Again, that's a number that was about average relative to our heat pump water heater installation program. So that's where that came from. But that's the idea here, and it's to get these this equipment into the contractor community, help them become that much more familiar with it. And if they're not already, and all 3 of these things that we're talking about, heat pump, water heating, HVAC, and battery storage, are all relatively new in their respective trade spaces. So we think this would be really helpful. So those are the 2 workforce relief / resiliency concepts that we've come up with, and I'll stop there and let people comment.
Any comments or questions on these? Go ahead, Liz.
I think these are great. You said a word that triggered a question, which was the word stipend. When you give people money, they have to pay taxes on it. Have we sorted through what that means?
Yeah, you'll note that $500 times 1,000 people is not $1 million. we think we have to probably, in effect, pay them $600 and something, because we also would have to get their W-9 information, and we'd want it to be a net $500. So we expect that we would have to, we'd have to pay more to net the participant $500 for exactly the reasons that you mentioned.
Okay, so you might talk with some financial people and see if you can give them a scholarship or some other mechanism that wouldn't have it qualified as a W-9 funding. I think I'm doing that someplace else in one of my donation groups, and I wasn't until just this morning.
Yeah, the 1099 limit is $600. So if we go over $600 to make it net out, so that they get 500 in their pocket, then that means we're going to have to do all the accounting paperwork to issue every single person a 1099.
Which we don't want to do.
Which if we kept the whole thing under 600, then it's on them to report the income, and we wouldn't have to do the 1099. Both Nancy and Margaret. Nancy, why don't you tell us what's on your mind, then we'll do Margaret.
Sure. I'm happy to see this. I mean, all of this all sounds good and well balanced, as been said before. My question is, why isn't this part of our, non-COVID-19 response? Why is this special to COVID-19? And secondly, my comment is just that I attended a Solving Climate Change with Project Drawdown's Dr. Jonathan Foley on Saturday, and according to him, one of the best things that could happen is for the workforce to ramp up to be able to do this sort of work. So I think this is very timely, and why is this a special COVID-19 response thing and not a regular thing?
Sure seems like that once we get it started, we can continue it as a regular program. And if COVID-19 just kicks it to the front of the line, maybe we're doing ourselves a favor. I don't know.
Maybe I'll answer that,
Yeah, good.
Girish. It's a budget issue, Nancy. So we have $5 million a year set aside for programs, and the majority of that has been set aside for existing programs. So it's essentially more budget. And so you've assigned $10 million extra dollars. And we'll get to this in another item. Amy is in the middle of the process of hiring someone as an analyst who would be working on a building decarbonization long-term plan. And part of that person's responsibility will be developing workforce initiatives. So we expect a portion of the $5 million a year to be set aside for workforce initiatives. So it will be part of our long-term plan.
So this is augmenting basically an existing program, or accelerating even maybe.
We don't even have an existing program.
Okay. Okay, got it. All right.
Everything that we do in the program space to me is an experiment. We try different things. We see what's actually having an impact in the world. And I agree 100% that getting the workforce acclimated towards these technologies is super critical. And if this gets us moving on that, all the better. Rod, you have some comments, and Margaret, you have some comments?
Yes. I wanted to just say I appreciate the customer relief. I've heard from quite a few of our small businesses, especially asking the city for assistance, and we've actually set up a fund ourselves for utility payment support, but this will, I think, definitely help in augmenting that. With the workforce, I think this is interesting. I didn't notice you mentioned city employees, like building officials would qualify. I was just wondering if you'd run this by one of our city's HR folks. I don't know, but I just was thinking maybe is there something, you know, we should be aware of in terms of the paperwork, or just even you know, there's special extra rules around city public employees, and just was wondering if you just ran it by someone just to make sure we're clear with anything, any issues.
Sounded like you volunteered your staff to look at this.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to ask them, but yeah, have you done that already?
No, we have.
Okay.
Yeah, we've not, this general question of financial treatment, we know is a big issue, and we've got a lot of leads out right now. The scholarship idea,
Yes.
I think Liz brought up, I'm not sure we thought about that exactly before. Maybe there's an angle there. In terms of support to city personnel, this question came up in the mall meeting yesterday. No answers came up, by the way, but
Okay.
yeah, we know that there's a special probably set of concerns we need to think about there.
Okay. Yeah, if you would like me to ask my HR folks, I'm happy to do that. If you can just ping me, and
That would be great.
what I
Yeah.
should ask. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right,
Hi, Howard.
yeah, who was I missing, please?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm thinking about this training and wondering if you offer 500 a person, who are you specifically targeting? Could this be open to anybody, even if they're not being paid? And yeah, I mean, is the payment necessary? Or I realize it could be an incentive, and I just wonder, you know, what the thought is. I mean, I think that there are a whole group of folks, specifiers and yeah, city folks and others that may not need payment, but might be interested.
Yeah, I think our thought on that, at least so far, is that we would do this till the money runs out, but maintain availability and continue to advertise this. It would be free at that point.
Yeah.
It wouldn't cost you anything to take it, but you wouldn't necessarily be incentivized financially to take it. And that's about as far as we've gotten with our thinking on this. The incentive, again, is to really help get this going, to supercharge it, to provide some degree of workforce relief while people need it, or while people in this community, you know, not everyone's going to need it, but it does put the money out there quickly.
Well, we have city staff that might be being paid, and they may be a little light on the work this week. We might love to put our building inspectors and a few others through the class, and we certainly don't need the money because we're already paying the employees. Is that possible?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I have in mind. If you know, if you're not currently receiving a paycheck, maybe we can help you in this way. You may not need $500 to incent, but less. And for those who are or are simply curious, we have, this is done virtually, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, is there any reason why you wouldn't open even the first sessions up to folks who are curious and want to learn, but maybe receiving a paycheck, a building official or whatever, and are sitting in on this without any remuneration from us?
So I think it raises a bit of a larger question here, which is, we don't know when people sign up whether they're what their degree of need is. You know, we don't know if that contractor is currently working 50 hours a week or 0.
Okay.
And so I think if we were to, it would be a little easier, just brainstorming here, but it might be a little easier in a municipal context to say, hey, if you're currently working, yeah, we're offering this for free. And maybe that's something that, you know, a city could help administer. If you're furloughed, let's say, yeah, then there could be the stipend opportunity, but that's something that a city would probably have to help us with, right? Because we wouldn't know.
Let me add to this.
Yeah, go ahead, Girish. And then Liz has a comment.
Yeah, we are focusing on the trades. That's where this started. So it is plumbers, electrician, it's trades folks. So I think that's the core. We have reached out to our local union, the IBW local union. They are supportive of this. So we have to work with them to figure out how many people we can send this out to. And yeah, we want to make this relatively simple, but at the same time, yeah, we don't want to be, for lack of a better word, scammed. So I think, you know, the more we open it up to a variety of folks outside of the trades, we need to figure out what you're talking about, right? Which is, hey, do you already have a job? Are you already a municipal employee? But the main focus is
maybe you peddle it through the trades with a rebate, with a stipend, and you peddle it to everybody else's. You can attend this for free and be done.
Right. If you're with the city, or then it's free and you don't get nothing. And if you're with the trades, we'll give you a $500 stipend.
Yep, it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing that we need to keep it simple. I appreciate it's a great idea to open it up to everybody, but I think the focus here, which is a needed focus based on the experience we had with the heat pumps, and not having people knowledgeable about installing heat pumps, that we know there's a need out there for the trades to get that experience. So I think that's a great place to focus. And I think some professionals as well are on the target list. I would like us, 1, to focus on that. 2, I think allowing city employees to audit is the phrase, audit it at no cost to the city. The city would have to provide the time if they so chose, is fine. I would not like to see us open it up beyond that right now. I think the idea is to get this out and going, and then see how it works. And if there's a higher demand from outside groups and things, we can address it then. But I'd like to see it stay focused right now.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, Custer community resiliency.
Okay, so this is, again, half of the funding, and this is a longer term play. This is really to help support communities make their critical facilities more resilient, and resilient in the context of public safety power shutoffs, you know, other disaster relief, earthquake, fire, maybe things like COVID, for instance, pandemic support. 2 elements to it. One is a infrastructure planning element, and the other is capital project support. And the idea would be that these funds would be pro rata available to our communities based on load. So whatever your community's load is a share of SVCE, is the share of the $5 million that your community would get. 20% of that amount, or up to 20%, would be available for planning support, and the remainder would go to capital project support. So if you have a capital project that's perfect and already, teed up, and you don't really need to do any planning, you could apply all of your money to that that capital project. If you have a significant planning need, in other words, you need to know how you might target this money, then you could obviously deploy your 20% of the funding to planning support. The capital project support would be mainly focused on battery storage, so electric infrastructure at critical facilities. So that would really be the principal type of project we'd be focusing on. Some of our communities have got these in their sites as we speak.
When you look at resiliency in different communities, there's different needs with these darn power outages. And, you know, Saratoga has a whole 7 streetlights, and more than half of them were out for multiple days in the last power outages. And so we have a project to make those streetlights more resilient, but that's not a battery-based project, but that's a community resilience-based project. So how tight are we going to be?
So, great question. There is a lot of work we need to do to better define really what we mean here by resiliency infrastructure and capital project support. I think what we're looking for right now is directional concurrence, and any program that we would bring would probably be in the June timeframe. There's also a big question about how we weave this together with our current resiliency RFP work. Some really interesting, I think, opportunities there that Amy Bailey and the DCARB team are working on. They're really driving the resiliency RFP. Every community is in a slightly different place on this. Some communities that we talked to, say in the MOG yesterday, are really interested in having some joint work done. In a sense, having SVCE or experts hired through SVCE support efforts in their community. They don't have the bandwidth right now to go get planning support. But if we could help them do that, and then the financial support's provided here, that would be of great value to them. And similarly on the capital project side. So this is going to take, I think, a little longer to flesh out, but the arc here is $5 million pro rata to community, 20%, up to 20% planning, the balance to capital project support with the nature of the projects and the services provided through SVCE to be defined at this point.
Yeah, as we get more back into power shutoff season, this will probably be a much more relevant discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret, you had some comments?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is great. This is something we've been thinking about. That I mentioned it to Girish, but my concern really is more on the timeline, and it sounds like there's flexibility, but in light of the financial situation that we're all going into, like our city, we're looking at hiring freezes and having to scale back on capital projects and whatnot. So I just was, I don't know if we're gonna, those timelines are gonna work. We may just have to extend it out more is what I was thinking. So if there's flexibility on the timeline, that would be ideal, is my sense. I don't know if the MOG folks felt any differently, but that's what I'm getting from my.
Yeah, we heard a very similar, we didn't hear it expressed in time. It was more expressed in dollars, but the same general idea. Yeah, if capital budgets are frozen, but if we can make dollars available that could more or less entirely fund a particular project, then that money is available and you need to use it, that's something that they thought would be a plus. That would help make those projects happen when otherwise they might just be on hold at the moment.
I think there's a staffing issue coming down the pike as well.
Mhm.
with potential hiring freezes and layoffs I'm hearing from other cities, and we'll be okay, but we just have a lot of projects piled up, and with that, if we can't bring on more people to do them, they're just going to take longer to do. So this might go further down the list of projects we can handle in that time frame. Thank you.
Girish, you wanted to fill in some details here?
Yeah, we would be able to extend the timeline. We'll consult with some of the folks in the MOG, city staff, but I can say easily we can do maybe the planning support extended through June 2021, and the capital support could be maybe June 2022 or even end of 2022.
I think that would be.
I like that for similar reasons, Margaret.
Okay, if longer is better, we'll just, we'll extend the planning support for a year and, at least. And then we'll do the capital for another year, 22 maybe.
Rod?
Well, I appreciate that things are in great disruption right now. I would observe that things were in great disruption last fall, and there was enormous anxiety in my city on how we keep critical facilities going. And so I think that anxiety hasn't been forgotten and will persist. And so of all the capital projects in my city, something to make certain of our facilities more resilient. I mean, we have some really old facilities. Could be really welcome, and a little bit of money could help bring such a project to the head of the queue. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful that there will continue to be. One of the benefits now may be that the contracts we let to do these kinds of things, more projects could be more affordable, right? And so I'm excited that while it may take a while for some cities, others may hop on this and see what they can do to respond to these PSPS events that we know are going to continue to come. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a while and we've kind of forgotten, but it was quite a scorching issue within many of our cities from our public and having our facilities updated.
Right, and I think this whole idea of emergency response and resiliency and all of this is now people are more concerned about things that go awry and black swan events and so forth. So maybe it's a little more top of mind.
Right. It will be coming this summer. It definitely will be. That's the way it goes. Don, I have a question for you, which is of your remaining slides, is there anything in there that we need to see, or shall I get a member of the public who'd like to speak?
I think the rest is just background, and we've covered most of it in this conversation. So I think we can go to.
Yeah, then let me go to the public. Bruce, you wanted to say something?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Super. I am supportive of the first two categories of expenditures. I think that there's tremendous public relations value in the first two line items, 1A and 1B. And I think there's potential for some really good things to happen with the 2A and 2B. I don't feel the same way about the resiliency proposals. Resiliency, although it has certain public benefits, doesn't bend the carbon curve at all. And to devote $5 million to non-carbon curve bending projects where the amount of money isn't really enough to leverage too many significant city projects where the amount of senior staff time to review the proposals that you might receive will be very large, I think is just an error in focus. And where I would like to see that $5 million go is to small and medium-sized businesses. The whole, recession depression scenario that we're headed toward depends on employers coming back and rehiring their employees. And that's the biggest risk point for the long-term economic health of the country. And so, $250 isn't going to keep a restaurant on Castro Street in Mountain View, from going bankrupt, but 2,500 might. And so, there's some good news about the prevalence of the virus. It looks like a lot more people have been infected than we thought, which means that it's far less deadly than we had thought. And maybe that it spreads faster. So maybe we'll actually, get through this pandemic and its aftermath within a few months rather than a couple of years. But you have to make a decision in the short term, and I would urge you to spend far more money on small business relief than on long-term projects related to resilience that won't actually deploy money in 2020. That's all I had to say.
Thanks, Bruce. Liz?
I appreciate Bruce's comments. I was thinking, and maybe I misunderstood the presentation of the comments. I assumed that there was a requirement that the resiliency money was in fact going to have to bend the curve. I did expect that there would be a requirement that planning was in fact to specifically reduce greenhouse gases. And I would only offer, I understand the small businesses, and there is a lot of stuff happening out there, and for us to try and fit into that more is tough if we go outside our own bailiwick of energy. Cities, on the other hand, are really going to be hurting. At least a majority of our members, I think, are going to be really hurting. So I think that there's a real need, and there would not be the money available to do what typically are a little bit more out of the box and potentially more expensive bending the curve kind of projects. So that's where my mind was and why I was supportive of the resiliency programs.
Garish, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just remind the board of how we started this presentation. We want to diversify over time also, and resiliency projects actually result in jobs. And the second point being, this is not a one-shot deal. We are going to revisit. We don't know how COVID is actually going to flow through our economy. We have guesses. So I think looking at this again in the third quarter, maybe in this September timeframe, we'll be able to adjust our budget and programs accordingly.
So Rod and Amy both want to say something. Let me start with Amy, Rod. So she may have some very insightful comments. Amy?
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Great. I just wanted to make one comment. Thanks, Bruce, for your input. I would note that the resilience programs, as we've currently scoped them, that the board had approved a couple months ago, the initial kind of regional community planning for resilience, and also how we're thinking about it here, it very much is in support of decarbonization, and specifically what we're grappling with and trying to advance through the resiliency programs is ensuring that cities aren't enhancing their resilience by relying on diesel generators, since that's typically the main resilience technology for a lot of these types of facilities. So we're really looking at what are all of the low carbon solutions and pathways for enhancing resilience. And so it is very much, I believe, in line with SVCE's decarb mission. So I just wanted to bring up that point. Thanks.
If I could add and kind of pick up on that, the the notion here is battery storage. Battery storage can be exercised every day to help provide additional grid service, right? To help us take renewable energy that's generated during the middle of the day and use it in the evening. So yeah, it's providing a resiliency benefit. It's also providing a grid benefit if we can do this the right way.
And everybody likes to talk about batteries, but you know, we have $1 million project for our small downtown because we're at our load capacity. So we can't even add a level 2 charger. We're already maxed out. And so there's $1 million project to upgrade our facilities because we wanted to put a fast charging bank in our downtown. That's not batteries. That's a little bit even old school, but for us, it's a necessary step. And the site that wanted to do it turns out to currently be a gas station. And there's just not the power for him to even put in a level 2 charger. Rod, you had comments?
Yeah, I was going to note that the rebates we're talking about don't bend the carbon curve, but we do them because we think it's the right thing to do. And in the case, as several have noted, my city hall has a generator that doesn't cover the full load of that city hall that's 50 years old. It's a diesel generator. I would love to see the city replace it with something more resilient. Right now at the PUC, PG&E has an application in to distribute power generation throughout the Bay Area, I believe. And we believe that's a fossil fuel based approach. I think that to the extent we can take some of that on with a less carbon consuming program, I think we could be well recognized and do something to serve. So while I actually think that this would benefit us in multiple ways. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? And I'm going to take your word, Don, that the backup slides are not something we need to review in detail. In terms of presenting this to the whole board, since we're going to go through it category by category, it seems like you should show your summary slide like you did and immediately go to the first 2 on the next slide, and then the next 2 and the next 2, because the board's going to go through the same discussion.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay, so let's move on from this one. Well, speaking of resiliency, let's go right on to that.
All right. Can you all hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, great. So I will be fairly brief with this update since I think I recall that there is a time constraint by one of the committee members, but happy to delve into any questions or details. Well, first of all, good morning. We've already spoken a decent amount about resilience already in this meeting. Given the current COVID situation, as many of the chair members have mentioned, it's kind of hard to recall, or hard for some people to recall, that we were dealing with a very different crisis last fall, wildfire season, and our communities were being subject to these public safety power shutoffs. Although that seems like a long time ago, as multiple board members have mentioned, fire season is around the corner. In order to respond to those PSPS events, so-called public safety power shutoff events, we did join forces with 3 other load-serving entities, 2 CCAs and a municipal utility, to try to help our customers adopt backup storage solutions to enhance their resilience. And so we released this RFP last fall, and it closed around the end of last year. And I realize I've been a little bit in the background the last few months with this. We've been busy evaluating proposals. And so the program, just to provide a little bit more background to refresh your memory, the program is structured such that SVCE enters into a contract for grid services from an aggregation of storage systems. And the contract is therefore with a battery vendor and aggregator. And that battery vendor and aggregator is the one that is selling systems to customers, residential customers, and commercial and industrial customers as well. And so it's actually a grid services or so-called virtual power plant contract. And by paying for those grid services, we're effectively helping to buy down the cost of these systems for the end customer who are using these systems for resilience. Okay, Andrea, if we could go to the next one, please. So we released this RFP last fall. Last November. We've been evaluating proposals the last few months. We got an amazing response. We didn't know what sort of response that we were going to get. We had 19 proposals submitted just to our agency. And 36 unique bids. And so this was a much bigger response than we thought. We thought maybe we'd only get a few proposals. So that was a very positive sign. There are a lot of storage companies, solar companies, et cetera, that are really paying attention to CCAs and our decarb mission and our mission to serve our customers and responding to our RFPs. So that's great. Just a high level recap from the evaluation process. We had a pretty wide distribution of quality of bids. And so some of the top reasons for low scores were, we did have some non-compliant bids. The price distribution was quite significant. We also had some proposers that, although they were very experienced when it comes to installing storage systems and really getting steel in the ground, they didn't have the experience or sufficient experience actually aggregating those systems to provide grid services. And that's a really key component of this program. And then also some proposals included more or less incomplete go-to-market plan or plan for how that storage provider would work with SVCE and our member agencies to deliver this program to our customers. So a few high-level observations from this process, from the entire RFP process. First of all, as you all already know, I believe, there's very big policy and regulatory uncertainty when it comes to resource adequacy, generally speaking, and the grid services contract that we're entering into is an RA contract, but also specifically when it's resource adequacy coming from these virtual power plants. There are a lot of different rules from CAISO, from the PUC, and they're changing the rules and updating them. It's a very dynamic landscape. And so a large part of the evaluation process was really understanding how well these different entities understand the current rules and can see what direction they're heading. But it's going to play out pretty significantly in the contract negotiation, for sure, how to incorporate this pretty significant policy and regulatory risk in the contract. We also had many of our C&I respondents, and so the RFP, we asked for residential proposals and then also C&I proposals, since systems are quite different for those different types of customers. On the C&I side, we saw an interesting variety of kind of hyper-focused solutions for specific industries. In some cases, for instance, grocery stores, some were very focused on multifamily and the specific needs of multifamily. They're very familiar with different load shapes from these different sectors and what types of value they could provide. And so that was an interesting learning from this process. And then one final observation from the evaluation process is that it became very clear during the interviews and the discussions that prior to being able to execute a contract, there's actually an intermediate step, which is a pretty significant collaboration on data analysis with a vendor. And data analysis in this case is referring to looking at anonymized customer data to determine how many of our customers, for instance, could be eligible for effectively free systems through the state solar and the state storage incentive program, SCHIP, since there are a number of buckets of state money now. For instance, if you've experienced more than one PSPS event, if you're located in a disadvantaged community, if you're a specific type of community facility or offering community value. And so there are a lot of new rules based on the recent PSPS experience. And so we obviously want to maximize the amount of state incentive funding that we're leveraging through this program. So if you could go to the next slide, Andrea. Thank you. So that's a fairly whirlwind tour of the last few months, but all of this has led up to, we've entered into contract negotiations with 2 vendors. One vendor focused on our commercial industrial customers, including our member agencies, and then another vendor that focuses on single-family residential systems and also multifamily residential. And we're really, at this point in time, working on that data analysis phase to refine our customer segmentation, our go-to-market plan, and ultimately get a refined bid price and volume. So we're doing this in parallel with the RA contract negotiation. Another big component of this, and this is related to the last item that Don presented, we're evaluating how exactly, whether or how to tie this program to the COVID community resilience efforts. And right now, the updated timeline for contracts from this RFP is expected to be brought forward to the board in June. For the last few months, the estimate was May. We're running a little bit behind schedule given the complexity of the regulatory environment, basically, and how that's feeding into the contract structure. So I'll pause there. So that's the overview of the update for the Resilience RFP. Happy to dive into any specific questions that you may have.
I have a quick one, then we'll see what the board has. Maybe it's not quick. I worry about the relevance of the whole program with respect to whether or not we get any RA benefit, given the craziness that's going on in that world. Tell me what you think. Is this something we move forward with that uncertainty, or do we really need to pause until we have more clarity, or do we do something different?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's one that I've been speaking with Hillary and Monica and Girish about as well. Our current thoughts are to move forward with this contract, and part of the risk associated with the changing RA regulations will be dealt with, so to speak, in the actual contract itself, like who is bearing that risk. And so it's certainly very much tied into the contract negotiation process, but also considerations are being fed into our legislative and regulatory efforts as it relates to the central buyer and central RA procurement method. Just for context, we hope that this is a meaningful program, so I don't want to suggest otherwise, but as far as RA is concerned, it's a pretty small amount compared to SVCE's total compliance obligation. Right. And so in that case, it's a little bit in the noise if you were to ask Monica based on all of the RA that she procures. And so I think there's some appetite to kind of take a bit of risk with this innovative approach, really, because it can also help us make a better argument to the PUC that we should have more control over being able to procure from local resources and count them, basically.
Right.
And I'm not sure if Girish wanted to add anything to that as well.
Yeah, if I may, I think we should continue. The proposed decision definitely on the central procurement entity kind of puts a pall over local RA, but this will have system RA value too. And just from innovation, even grid resiliency efforts, and looking at the long game, we should be looking, I think we should continue. We are looking at the value we'd be willing to pay on this, but given that it's 4 megawatts that we're looking at, I think it's worth going forward with. But Howard, that question you ask is definitely something that we have in mind, and we'll continuously ask that question going forward. On the regulatory side, we have filed comments basically, and also we've had the DER providers have filed some very strong comments at the PUC asking for credit for our behind the meter resources, and their ex parte meetings that are being scheduled for next week with the CPUC on this issue.
Yeah, just challenging space. Liz, you have some comments?
Yes, thank you. I think Amy and Girish just kind of said good points. And my perspective on this is going back to where we were a year ago as Amy began. It was a totally different situation. And I think the public's awareness and concern about having resiliency on the local basis to avoid PSPSs was really, really important. And I think we need to re-engage with the emotions and of that time and the significance of what this program and its innovative potential was. I think, frankly, when we run across this coming summer and fall, people are actually going to be more and more interested in it because they want to have more and more independence and ability to get away from utilities and things and be more independent through all of these disasters. So I think it's a great program. I'm very much supportive of continuing it. It will be evaluated as we go, but I think it's a value to our customers and to, as everyone said, the marketplace and the future.
Okay, great. Nancy?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in really quickly. I agree that it's worth pursuing, even given the uncertainty for reasons of innovation and resilience. So, yeah, nice work. I'm obviously super curious about, the details of the proposals and looking forward to seeing what comes forward. And okay, thanks.
Rod?
Yeah, I think this is exactly the kind of thing that differentiates us from PG&E. And although there's uncertainty, there's a lot more. I think there's multiple ways you can count the value of this, even though there are a lot of things we don't know, and even though it's, the bids came in all over the map and everything. So I'm very supportive of proceeding with this. The world's got to figure this out, and we might as well lead.
Yeah, I view it more as an experiment as to whether or not the strategy is going to yield the intended results. But overall, it's going to be good. And if it's the perfect thing, we do more. And if it's not the perfect thing, we move on to the next thing. And that's part of what innovation is. You gotta get out there and try it. You gotta make something happen and analyze where you landed and then move from there. So I actually have no problem. I didn't mean to start with such an easy question, but it is the question of the day, I think, in this space. Does anybody have any other questions on this? Any member of the public wish to comment on this item? I'm not seeing any. Does the clerk have any public comment?
And no comments received.
Okay, good. So we're going to move on from this item. Thank you, Amy. And we're going to move on to a mid-year budget update.
Okay, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Good, thank you. Sorry to have to keep asking that question, but too many times I've talked and realized a minute later I'm still on mute.
It's always good to be safe.
Thank you. All right, well, good morning again to all of you, Chair and Executive Committee. This will be a brief presentation, but we do have an ask for you in this presentation. We want to get your feedback on. So just, we're not going to present hard numbers on mid-year budget. We're going to start those meetings next week with the departments. We've given you a briefing in the rates presentation last month of where we think we're going to land. So just to give you our roadmap on the mid-year budget, we usually wait for a rates proceeding or some sort of a rates adjustment to then have that mid-year budget discussion. Usually mid-year is that February, March timeframe, a little bit later this year, just because we didn't have a lot of confidence in where PG&E was going to land in rates. So step one was the March board meeting where we received a direction on rates. Just yesterday, we received PG&E's annual electric true-up report. Happy to report that the PCIA that we assumed last month is coming in right around the 21% weighted average mark. And we also assumed last month a 0.4% increase in PG&E rates. Looks like their annual true-up is going to be just a shade under 1%. So very much in line to what the assumptions were presented last month. So we feel safe to move forward with the 4%, maintaining the 4% discount. So we're talking to you today about an ask in the expense side of the budget, and also we'll be talking to the various departments next week regarding their budget and looking at true ups on the expense side where there's shortages or surpluses that we can claim as permanent savings. And then we'll come back at the May board meeting with amended mid-year budget. Next slide, please. So get right into the ask. We consulted we commissioned a consultant a few months back, and one of the duties of that consultant was to perform an operational risk on SVCE, and really the focus right in were to look at the power supply side because that's where all the expenses are. So if you look at our current state in the power supply, and finances in there as well, but a small group of people really managing multiple large transactions. So we have a $240 million power supply budget that is growing as demands increase. And you have the small group of people managing that. To make everything work, we also leverage many consultants and outside experts. As you know, we're always adapting to ever-changing regulations, as we just talked about with the resource adequacy in the previous presentation. We have to react to major events such as the wind contract not moving forward, so we have to replace that. And even though we just are near completion of the RFOs process that we started last year, and we're bringing those to a close over the next couple months, we're not out of the business. Almost every year we have to be part of or issue our own RFO for long-term power purchase agreements as well as short-term energy. So I'll skip the gap in the middle and just move to the future state. So looking at where we're going, and this is coming sooner, much sooner than we'd like, in that we don't have a lot of time to prepare for this. A lot of those long-term PPAs that we engaged in are going to feature solar plus storage, where we're the scheduling coordinator, and we're going to have to be active in dispatching that storage. If you look at the program side of it, we're looking at significant demand side operations, and Amy touched on just the resiliency program previous presentation. We long-term want to move to a 24/7 carbon-free power procurement and energy supply. That's going to take very specialized resources to monitor that and to achieve that. We are looking at customer contracts. And this has been, you've been briefed by Don Bray, and for those in the Risk Oversight Committee, we go through a little bit on that. But if we are going to have specialized 3, 5, 7 year contracts with our large customers, we're going to need the resources in-house to be able to deliver on those contracts and to monitor them and make sure that the agency financially stays safe. And so you've seen it before, and we'll continue to have increased variables and also increased constraints in meeting our future goals for the agency. So then I'll go to the middle, and that's our gap. So we feel that as through this operational audit, where we currently are and where we're going, we'd like to ask for one new position in the specialty in the data engineering field, and one position with a senior level position in the resource planning side. So one position would be located in the programs area, the other position would be in power supply, but of course they would be working together and collaboratively. We feel that considering the challenges that the agency is facing, this seems like a prudent move and recommendation. And it's good to bring this up now as opposed to waiting. A lot of times we find ourselves where the need is there and then we go out and hire it. Here we're saying we know that need is coming and we're trying to be proactive and bring this to you today. Before I go then to the next slide with our really next steps, I'd like to pause for discussion and also invite Girish's comments as well.
Let me make just one comment. Let me spin it in a positive way. I mean, we as an organization directed these actions to take place. We asked to get storage, and we asked to change the way the business models are running, and we're not unhappy that all this stuff's coming online soon. We're all super happy that this stuff's coming online soon. Of course, with what we ask for is the obligation to make sure we staff the organization to deliver what we think we need. And I get that that's the gap thing, but I actually view this as a slide, as a positive slide. We're nailing it, and we need to fill in the holes to be able to deliver on the exceptional work that we're doing. Girish, you probably have some better comments than that, though.
No, just to add to what Don said, you know, we've evolved quite a bit from the time we started putting our power supply contracts together in 2016. The world has changed in terms of RA, for example. We now have a 3-year obligation on RA, and we are going to move into an operational period. The risk we face here, when you think about transaction risk, we have dozens and dozens, more than 100 active contracts that we have to manage. We have to go beyond spreadsheets and beyond homegrown databases into basically managing data effectively. So we have two things we're looking for, right? So one is the data engineer. And when you think about the kinds of data we're getting from Calpine, we are getting data dumps of all the smart meter data every day. And that smart meter data gets updated over a 55-day period. So that's flowing in on one side. We have flat files, including DMV databases, parcel information. So when you think about all our decarb programs, these have to be meshed together. And most importantly, from a transaction risk standpoint, it's our power supply side. The contracts that we have, for example, min and maxes on many of our contracts in terms of volumes. They have different tweaks to them. Some of them are unit contingent contracts. Some of them are non-firm, some are firm. It's beyond what we can do with the current tools that we have. So the data engineer position is basically someone we believe who would work for Amy. She's kind of right in the center of grid integration and grid innovation and get the data architecture right. On the other hand, Monica actually has to manage the portfolio, and we need someone who can run the very complex models that we are using, whether it is for IRP modeling or evaluating a one-off resource for, say, wind resources that are coming in. So we've been talking about this even when we presented the budget last year, we said we think we'll be somewhere around 30, 32, Don. I'm not sure what number we provided precisely, but it was somewhere in around 30. So I think at this point, this is managing risk. And from a staff and board standpoint, if we don't manage this, the chances of us losing money or having an error that could cost us a lot of money it starts to go, it would be high. And secondarily, it's a reputational risk too, right? So there's a cumulative effect to not taking care of this. So I'll wait for questions from the board because I'm sure you're going to have some. Thank you.
Who else would like to comment on this item? So we'll start with Liz.
All right. Obviously I didn't talk enough in 5 hours last night. Conversation so far has been excellent for me. One is I do agree with whoever said this. I think the slide is wrong. I think the use of the term gap is wrong. Howard, I thought your intro was excellent. And I'm not sure you need to do this, but my mind went to, when did we do the last reorg? And what we took care of then? And now we're reorganizing a reorg to do something else. And to me, that is showing the organization is being very limber and not, and recognizing, very simply stated, recognizing the risk that would be undertaken without these resources of staff. So I would try and phrase it in a more positive way. And it's not even future state. I mean, so we're already there. It's not in the future. We're already there. We have, and Howard, again, you said it very well. We have already gotten ourselves to where we wanted to be. And now we're just being limber and making the organization support everything that the board has decided. So I would look at some better words and some more positive phrasing and just show this as a step in a limber process of the organization being nimble, limber, whatever like that.
Excellent point.
Rod?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there are several ways to talk about this. When we started and hydropower was cheap and we weren't doing our own, trying to initiate our own contracts for power yet to be generated. Things were relatively simple. We didn't have a lot of competition, for as much competition as we do now for these carbon-free and renewable assets. And yeah, the world is now, we've been successful in promoting this model and really upping the number of agencies that are now competing with us for limited resources. And that creates a more complex world, but it's a good world to be in. I don't know this for a fact and would welcome some comment, but another way to slice this is how do we compare to our peer agencies on staffing? My belief is we are running somewhat lean. Any thoughts on that or any input?
Yeah, you know, we looked at that back when we adjusted the budget in August, because we also added, I believe, another 2 positions then.
Mm-hmm.
And we were right, we were still on a position per KWH ratio. We were right in the middle of the pack. We were certainly not overstaffed compared to our CCA, other CCAs.
In the beginning, we were highly reliant on consultants, and I believe we've been dialing that back. Is that part of the narrative that we might apply here as well?
That is a great point. And yes, and also, for instance, we spend a lot of money on using a consultant to help us with Ascend Analytics, bringing that expertise in-house with somebody focused on the Ascend Analytics model would be certainly save us a lot of money in the consulting side. So it's in a lot of ways, it could be cost neutral.
Yeah, so I think another thing to point out is we deliberately chose a path of innovation in programs, not just things that everybody else is doing, and I support that. And I mean, Howard said it in the earlier item, and so yes, getting data from many sources and putting it together, architecting a database and extracting the right information from it and from other sources takes real effort, right, and technical effort. And so, you know, I think our staff, Girish, you and your team have done a great job of hiring, and I think it would you know, I trust you. If you think you need more resource to do this, I think there are a variety of justifications that could be applied, but I'm supportive of increasing our staff, even in this uncertain time.
Nancy?
I'm also supportive. I agree with framing it as a bit more of a proactive move. This I believe would have been the case even without COVID-19. So I think clarifying that this is in response to what we've learned as we operate in an ever-changing marketplace, that these roles are needed to help us succeed and serve our customers is a good message. And to the extent that you can give the board a couple options or a couple scenarios with justifications for each, I think that would be helpful. But I'm broadly supportive of this change.
I'm less sure, Nancy, in a group of 13 about presenting too many options. Did you have some thought on what you were visualizing?
I don't, if one option were presented, I'm okay with that. But, you know, obviously, if people ask, if board members ask for alternatives, then it would be, I mean, it's a reasonable question to ask. And if they don't, then, you know, that's fine. But I think just to be prepared with some, you know, variations would be good.
Yeah, Girish is the guy we've hired to make the organization fulfill our dreams and goals. So Girish, comment on this.
I think going with the recommendation, we'll write the staff report that way. But Nancy, I'll have a plan B. So if there is some pushback in it, and I'll tell you what it would be. I would not hire one of the positions that we currently have open in our current table of in our current staff. So that would result in salary savings, and I would offer that we wouldn't hire for a year. So we'd keep that open for a year, and I may do that anyway. But right now, I think that would get some labor savings for a year.
Liz?
So I'm pleased with the way the conversations are going. I'm just looking at the board presentation. Again, I think the graphics should be significantly tweaked. The words and so forth I've talked about and phasing it more positively. I don't know, when you put that many small lines of points underneath, they're hard to follow. People get distracted. So I'm not quite sure what to suggest for that. Maybe the more positive message would simplify those kind of things. And someone said something, it just went out of my head. In terms of alternates, and Girish has the answer to that question. Also, the dollar value to those alternatives. I know there are some board members that are very likely to say, well, what exactly does this mean in terms of the dollar value? And to Rod's point, he was talking basically about that. We're running lean, and just having a comment saying we continue to run lean, and our cost, overhead cost is still, whatever percentage, comfort level points.
We'll certainly.
I would just add too that, there are now several CCAs, Marin, even Monterey Bay, right, that are getting to be substantially larger than we are. So there's a fixed overhead in running any agency, and in some ways, heads per megawatt hour served or whatever, or megawatt is maybe not fully the right metric.
It's a tough business that's got increasing demands and requirements, and a board that's very aggressive in where we want the organization to move. And
Yeah, and the complexity argument, I think, is an effective one.
I hate to say it, we sidetracked Don again. The two Dons couldn't get more than one slide. But Don, I'm worried you have more valuable information that we need to see. Can we look at the rest of the presentation and see if there are any questions after that?
Really one slide after this one. And
Okay.
this is basically saying we'll be recommending
What you said, yeah.
table of organization to 29 FTEs with the two positions that we just talked about. Titles to be named later. And appreciate all the feedback. You have to remember, I come from the profession where the glass is always half empty. So appreciate the positive spin that we need to put on this.
Well, you did say we only had a 21% rise in PCIA, and I still consider that a disaster. But the fact that our forecast was accurate, I sense the true pride in that from the organization. All right, does anybody have any other sort of wrap-up thoughts? Then let me double check with the public, and then we'll have final comments. Any member of the public wish to say something on this item? Seeing none, did anything come into our clerk?
No comments received.
Okay, so then for us, Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that I was smiling and nodding when Don said that we can hold the 4% discount, and that our forecasts were accurate, which is, I'm not going to say a first, but very, that's actually very good. So kudos on that, staff. Really appreciate the foresight.
Excellent. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, I think you've heard what we have to say. Good job. And we'll look forward to that at a board meeting near us.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last item on our agenda. So any comments from the committee or from staff? Seeing none, I want to thank everybody for their efficiency in this meeting, and we'll see everybody at the board meeting soon. So
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, staff.
we're officially adjourned. Thank you, guys.